Well, Dusty,
Well,
how about if I introduce our guest today?
I think you should. You need to, because you've got, you know who these. I knew who these people were, but you're a lot older than me, so you knew a lot of their history before I did.
So we're going to start there.
You're both older than us.
Actually,
Probably so.
anyone who watches this podcast and the following has become surprisingly good. We've been amazed how God has blessed it. But it's all about the stories. And we love songwriters. We love song stories. And I began seeing it maybe a year ago, not that long maybe, I began seeing stories on Instagram of the Albert E. Brumley Publishing Company. And they were like old historic photos, which always catches my attention. And so I just reached out at random. I sent you an Instagram message, and I said something to the effect of, I don't know who you are or who's posting these pictures, but my name's Dave Clark, and I have a podcast that I do with Dusty Wells, and we would love to get you to share your story. And you wrote back and you said, my name is Kevin, my wife's name is Betsy, and Betsy is a Brumley, and her dad was Bob Brumley. And I said, if you are ever in Nashville, would you come and be on our podcast? And so we met all of about 10 minutes ago, and
It's awesome.
we could not be more excited that you're here.
Thank you.
So, Betsy, we'll start with you.
Oh.
Just kind of, so you're Bob's daughter.
I am Bob's youngest daughter, yes.
And Bob Brumley was one of, were there 6 kids that Albert E. had?
6 kids, yeah. 5 boys and a girl.
5 boys and a girl. And for those who are listening who may not know Albert E. Brumley's name, you should. I'll start by saying
exactly
that.
Right.
Get to know him.
Yes.
Get to know him.
Yes. No, that's so true. And that's why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Is for these kind of reasons.
These
like
kind of
this.
stories.
You know, he's a music publisher and did all the production and all this stuff. I'm in the music business part of it, the artist part of it. And there are so many great heroes of the faith that I like to call in this music industry, like an Albert Brumley, that some of our people don't know. Just like they don't know a Mom and Pop Spear, or that he traveled with, or a Dottie Ramble. They don't know these people. That a lot of this newer, but these are names. If you're in the Christian music industry, I say go back and do your homework. So,
Do your homework.
Yeah.
I feel like they're the pioneers of why we're even here.
You're exactly right. And while we're still doing what we're doing,
Why we're able to do it.
Yeah.
And even through the other genres, they don't think they realize how instrumental gospel music was to the foundation of what we call the music industry today.
you're exactly right. You're exactly
Yeah,
right.
and we've talked a lot on these episodes about just if you didn't, anybody that's been in Christian music as we know it for more than 30 years got their start in Southern gospel.
No,
Some of them don't even know it.
No, that's so
And
true.
you start get them
Yeah.
to tell their story, and you say, well, you realize that, and you start pointing out the connection.
Yeah.
We were in here a few weeks ago with a group called the Archers, who are on the forefront of the Jesus movement. And in the conversation, it came out that they grew up listening to the Statesmen.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
Sure.
In California.
Yeah. I mean,
Which
it
is-
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
I mean,
So, yeah.
So everybody knows your granddad's songs. Why don't you list 3 or 4 of the top ones, just for reference? If
just
we've
for
got-
fun.
Yeah.
What's that?
Just for fun.
Just for fun.
Just for not name. So everyone's going to know I'll Fly Away. Because
Yes.
that is like the thing that everyone knows. Jesus, hold my hand.
Yeah.
I'll meet you in the morning.
Yeah.
Rank strangers to me. Turn your radio on. If we never meet again.
Yep.
Did you ever go sailing? I mean, there's a lot.
And those
Turn your radio
you could
on.
stop with one
Yeah,
song.
you're
on that
exactly
list.
right.
Yeah.
And you could say, and for a, we've had some conversations with the writers, and one of them even said something like, I told a story, and he said, I hope my kids have access to the story afterwards. And I'm thinking, yes, that's awesome, but gosh, tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the story. Yeah. And when a writer, their legacy is their byline.
Yeah.
And you could stop with any one of those titles, and we could do a 3-hour episode on each one of those titles.
I knew Albert Brumley wrote I'll Fly Away, but when all of a sudden I was doing a little bit of my homework, which I needed to do, all of a sudden it hits you. I thought that song had just been around
Forever?
forever. forever. Because I'll guarantee you most every contemporary artist, Southern gospel, has sang that song.
Country artist.
Country artists.
Yeah, country
Rap
artists,
artists.
rap.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of a gospel song, that's usually one they'll pick right away. And that I've experienced that.
Because everybody knows it.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to get, so everybody get on stage, what are they going to sing?
Yeah.
They're going to sing I'll Fly Away.
That's exactly right.
So for 5 years, and we didn't get to Kevin. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Your husband, Betsy, your husband Kevin is not at the end of the table, and
Yes,
I'm
he
sorry
is.
we jumped right into the conversation. Dusty mentioned I traveled with a group called the Spear Family, and so for 5 years, I played guitar,
What years was it?
81 through 86.
You ever come to Springdale, Arkansas?
Absolutely, we came to Springdale.
So you met as kids then?
Then we
Yes.
met at
Betsy would have been there.
I
at the
would have been
gospel
there.
sing.
I would have been.
I remember you.
I would have been pretty quiet, but for
Okay, you
5
said that
years,
really good.
5 nights a week, they would do a medley of "Turn Your Radio On," which your granddaddy
Yep,
wrote.
yep.
And at the end of the famous intro, and Ben would stop playing, and while he was leading the audience in that, I was putting on the banjo and getting the picks on, and I would come out and play "I'll Fly Away."
That's great.
And I asked Brock one night, because I'm not just a great banjo player, but you didn't have to be for a song like that because it was fairly accessible. And I asked Brock one night, I said, can I just play a different song? Because it was like every night, and Brock just kind of laughed, and he said, first of all, no. And I said, well, do I have to play banjo? And he said, the thing about banjo is nobody likes it but the people.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And so for
That's
5
the
years, I played "I'll Fly Away" every night with the Spear Family, and you get away from it and you realize that you're caretakers of a copyright on some level,
Yeah.
because you're keeping that alive for the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we look at ourselves as caretakers.
I
I mean,
love
it's
that. They're your baby. They're
for
your
our
family's
babies, and you've got to protect those things because trust me, we have had requests for "I'll Fly Away" to be used literally in every scenario you can think about.
Oh yeah.
We've turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars because it does not complement the song. I mean, it would just ruin it if
Yeah.
it was used in the
Yeah.
wrong context.
Yeah.
So they added in copyright clauses about 15 years ago something called a moral clause. And you want to explain that and how that would affect a copyright like "I'll Fly Away"?
Well, I mean, you think about it, there when you have a copyright of any kind, it doesn't matter what it is. The first time it hits the public, that's what they remember.
Yeah.
So whatever context it's in,
Yeah.
that's what they're going to carry with them.
Yeah.
So you've got to take that into consideration moving forward because it's no longer about what the song, it's about what the people believed
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great
You know,
explanation.
so you have to think, if you want to be in the publishing business and last for more than 5 minutes, you've got to think about how is the perception going to be. And if it's used in this, it could be worth $5 billion. Great, but what have you done to the song, the life of the song?
Right.
You've just
Yeah.
cut it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is 95 years we're talking about, or depending on however old people are.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So in our it's 95 years, but so that's a long time. Well, that's until you get to derivatives, and that's a whole
Yeah.
different story.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you've got to think about those things. So the moral clause, we've been doing that for years, protecting our copyrights. It's always been that way.
All right.
Because "I'll Fly Away," as Kevin likes to argue, is a country song, but it's also a rap song.
You're right.
It's also,
Right.
basically any genre song that you want.
Yeah.
So,
Especially now with the way the genres all do their different things, especially with older songs and what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, one other thing to add though is the way what Betsy's saying is it's the first time you hear the song is how you move forward.
Yeah.
But if you put it into the wrong situation, and then that's someone's first time hearing that song,
Yep.
they take it forward in the wrong
That's,
situation.
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I think one of the, I hope I don't open a can of worms here, but one of the funniest uses I ever saw of that song was,
Oh no. Oh no.
I'm a big Willie Nelson fan. And are you aware of how
Willie sings it every night.
he sings it every night. Yeah.
Do you know how he uses it though?
I Saw the Light, which that melody's from Grandpa's song, and I don't even want to get into that, but go ahead.
when I heard him, he did it as part of a gospel medley with a song called "Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I Die," and went right into "I'll Fly Away."
That's so funny.
And I'm thinking,
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
and what I know about Willie Nelson is very little except his songs, but I thought that may be a very spiritual moment to him. I don't know, but I remember thinking, I had never thought about "I'll Fly Away" in that light.
That's funny. Well, people always ask us what our favorite versions are. My favorite version is the Celtic punk version, which is really great.
Really?
Yeah, it's a band called Flatfoot 56.
Okay.
Love those guys.
Okay.
And then the disco version, which is Disco Praise.
Oh my!
Now,
God.
disco, you got to Google that.
Yeah, I
man.
will.
I'm telling
I will.
you that.
You'll find it on YouTube.
You will.
Okay. All right.
So
That's
when you
interesting.
So Dusty and I are hearing about that use for the first time. When you first heard that was how it was going to be used, did that scare you at all? Did you?
Oh, disco! You mean like Disco Praise or the Celtic? Well, Disco Praise is back in the '70s. I had nothing to do with it. I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah.
But the Celtic punk version, I mean, it's a mechanical. There's nothing we can do about it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, so I actually reached out to Flatfoot 56 because I'm like, I think it's fabulous. There's bagpipes and everything, right? And the story they told was really interesting. They were in, I think it was Michigan or Ohio, somewhere like that. And they were going to a concert and someone passed, a girl on the way died in a car wreck. So they sang this song as for her because she didn't make it to the concert. And then everybody loved it so much, they became part of their set. Now they in their show with it.
Wow.
Because people love it. Now they expect it, right? So I'm pretty sure I told that story, right? So if I hear from any Flatfoot 56 fans I'm wrong, just tell me I'm okay with that. But that's how I remember it right now. But yeah, so it's interesting how little things like that work their way into sets or into whatever, because was it Bon Jovi?
Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen, that's who it was.
One of the members of the E Street Band had passed away, and their first concert back, they, sang a tribute of "I'll Fly Away" to their
Unbelievable.
past
But see,
member.
that goes back to what you said at the beginning. When you think of old gospel songs, what is the one that people identify? It's "I'll Fly Away." They just, I heard that in church years ago, so that's their gospel song they know.
Well, you hear it all the time. It's
yeah.
not just Willie Nelson sings it every night, but you also you hear it on the Grand Ole Opry all the time when they all come together. And when there's a bunch of people who are just coming together to sing, you want to sing songs that everyone knows, and that's just one of them.
There's been numerous times on the Dove Awards when they've had mixed groups come together to do a gospel song, and I always hear people say, "Oh, just put 'I'll Fly Away' in there."
Everybody knows it.
Because they know it. Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows it. Yeah. Everyone loves it. It brings the crowd to their feet every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
So
it's an amazing song.
Okay, "I'll Fly Away" is if that was all he'd written. Now, do I remember right that somewhere I heard that he worked on that song for 2-3 years?
For about 3 or 4 years. He started writing in 29 and published in 32.
Wow.
And do I also remember that when he started writing it, he was writing it about "I'll Fly Away from the cotton fields"?
Yes, because he was picking cotton. I mean, if you've ever, you guys pick cotton. Do you know what it's like? So I did this because I wanted to know. Yeah. So you pick cotton, there are little like burrs and they're little sticky things. Yeah. So when they portray in the movies people picking cotton with their fingers bleeding, it's true because every time you do this to pick the cotton, it sticks you. There's a lot of blood on that cotton, so they have to wash it and stuff. So he was at the Hartford Music Institute and he had to go back to help the family, and that's when he was like he got the taste of. This is, life at the Hartford Music Institute where something that he loved. But he had to go back to how he was raised. And all of a sudden, when you go to the city and come back, the city, but you come back, all of a sudden things are different. So, So if I had the wings of an angel, I'd fly away.
We have an audio clip of an interview Albert actually did.
I would love to hear that.
He talks about being back on the farm, and he was singing the song, it was a prisoner song,
Mm-hmm.
"If I Had the Wings of an Angel." And he compares about the life that he's in on the farm as being in prison. And he wants off the farm. He can't wait till he sees a bird and he can't wait till he flies away.
Prison.
Because, life on the farm to him was like being in prison.
Yeah.
And he wanted out.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in the north. We didn't have cotton up there. We had it, but you had to buy it at Walgreens. but I was a fan of country music as a kid, and I remember Roy Clark had a song. I never picked cotton, but my mama did, my dad did. I think it was Roy Clark. Johnny Cash talked about getting away from the old cotton fields, and that was a real thing. And a lot of musicians' stories referenced life in picking cotton, and that was always interesting to me. And I literally remember the first time I saw a field of cotton, because you when you only see it in a store, you don't really think about what it would look like, and it looks just like what you would think it would.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up around that. The other thing that a lot of the early stories have in common is not only the cotton, but the farming. That was what everybody did. We've heard Billy Blackwood talk about it, and we heard and the story about Dad's spear, that he was behind a plow when the plow broke, and he told the Lord if he'd ever let him sing full time.
Yep.
You mentioned the Hartford Institute. Now that was owned by Eugene Bartlett.
Yep.
Is that Eugene? Is that was
Eugene? Yep.
Okay. And Eugene wrote songs like Victory in Jesus. He also wrote, if I remember correctly, a song that became the theme song of Little Jimmy Dickens, called Old Cold Tater.
Take an old cold tater and wait.
Wow.
Have you ever heard that?
No.
And so
I heard Victory in Jesus. I've sang it a few times.
So
They are different songs.
Yeah, they are.
Very
Yeah.
a little bit different.
songs.
But Jimmy Dickens, his nickname became Tater.
Tater, because of that song.
And he was like
Okay.
4'9". If you go down in front of the Ryman, there's a little,
Yep.
like a 4'9" statue.
Yep.
And I've had my picture taken because it's one of the few that makes me feel tall.
I was going to say you're about that height, so that's probably why. Yeah.
So he had the Hartford Institute and the Hartford Music Company. And from what I remember hearing about your grandfather, Eugene Bartlett took an interest in him and believed in him, and maybe even let him come and live with his family while he went to school. And in exchange for that, he said that he had to agree that after he graduated, he would help work for the company. And is that
Pay off his debt, yeah. Because he only had like $1.25 or whatever in his pocket.
Wow.
And he didn't have enough money for room and board, so Ian Bartlett said, come live with me. And he did. And then he had to go pay back the tuition and the room and board by working and writing songs.
Yeah.
Being a singing school teacher. He traveled with the Hartford Music Quartet.
Wow.
Just whatever he needed to pay back the debt that he owed to Ian Bartlett.
Huh.
And there was that was back in, would have been like around 1935 somewhere.
No. This is back in the 20s.
20s, okay.
So it's been
That was back in
ago.
Dusty's era. I get those years mixed up.
Yeah, right.
But there were, so he was deeply impacted by Ian Bartlett, is the way it listed in the.
Oh, Ian Bartlett was his mentor. I mean, they were close.
Wasn't your dad named after him? Maybe
Bartlett is my dad's middle name. So yeah, so that's exactly what. Yeah, they were very close. And when Ian died, it was a big deal. I mean, he was a young man when he died.
Yeah.
So, the songs were left unkept. They ended up doing blah, blah, blah. That's how Grandpa ended up with the Hartford music catalog, because he went back and bought it.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up with Ian Bartlett's copyrights, because Mrs. Bartlett assigned them to us after he passed away.
Which is
and that was pretty forward thinking.
Very forward.
Yeah.
And some other pieces of the story. So I talk a lot about the Spears. I love their story, but Dad's Spear was impacted in the same way with James Devon.
Grandpa, but see, the thing that people talk about is songwriting. No one ever talks about what kind of a publisher Grandpa was.
Right.
Yeah.
Grandpa was a master publisher. So, we became part of CSAC in 1944. We were one of the very first publishers to do so, because that's actually the first year we got our first sync, was in 1944, which is crazy to think about, right?
Sync meaning?
Synchronization, which means it was in a TV show or a movie.
Right.
So, and it was
The Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger. I was thinking, was it?
It was a commercial.
General Mills.
It was a
that's what
commercial for General Mills during the Lone Ranger television program.
And they used I'll Fly Away.
used
They used I'll Fly Away.
Yes,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So, we became with CSAC, and Grandpa started working with CSAC and blah, blah, blah. But they always kept up on the copyright law because Grandpa knew it. Because, I mean, you think about the Hartford Music Institute, Ian Bartlett was a good publisher. He went back and purchased the Central Music Company, the Eureka Music Company. So that Hartford represents songs all the way back to 1898 from the Choctaw Nation, from the Eureka Music Company, which is where we still sell a rudiments book that shows how to sing shape notes.
Wow.
And people still
So if you want to know how to read shape notes, we sell the book on our website.
we do.
Wow.
So, and that's from the Eureka Music Company, which is part of the Choctaw Nation in Stigler, Oklahoma. So it's crazy. So we represent all that stuff, right? So Grandpa, he kept up on copyright law because, again, our company really had stuff before copyright law even began. Right. So we've been through every iteration of copyright law. So Grandpa understood in 1978 that the laws were changing. And he knew all this. So what he did was Gene Bartlett, Ian died, so he was friends with Gene Bartlett, who's Ian's son. He hired Gene Bartlett to go in and make derivatives of every one of his dad's songs and all of Grandpa's old songs.
Wow. Which extends the copyright.
It's a brand new copyright.
Yeah.
So the interesting fact is, this is so cool, Gene Bartlett also worked for the Baptist Convention, and he was the guy who decided what went into the hymnals.
Wow.
So if you're a guy writing derivatives, what are you doing? You're putting your own music in the hymnals, are you not?
Yeah.
So the versions of All Fly Away and Victory in Jesus that we know today are actually the derivatives that Gene Bartlett did.
Interesting.
In 67 and in 76.
Wow.
Interesting.
So which extends the copyright.
Yeah.
So you're good for a month or so more.
A month or so more. So anyway, that's why we don't have any PD songs because we have derivatives. I mean, we've got derivatives upon derivatives upon derivatives of songs. And we have a brand new All Fly Away derivative that came out in 2023 and a Victory in Jesus last year.
Wow.
And Ben Spear was the first person who explained that to me. And he said that back in that day that they would go back and they would add the verses. And we got into it with a copyright search one time on behalf of the Benson Company for Precious Memories. And we began to look it up and we found different versions and different copyright dates for different verses. And I called Ben because he's the one who taught me publishing and he learned it from Papa Benson. And Ben began to explain that. And I was explaining to a writer last week that it was back in the early 80s when Benson began to say, hey, instead of putting words by and music by, if you would be willing to put words and music by. And I said, well, what difference does it make? It's the same money. And he said, well, you get down the road, if it's words by, you can take that lyric and give it to another music writer that's got a more current style.
Wow.
And a lot of guys at my age that have been in the business all their life did not pay attention to the business side of it like you're talking about. And you mentioned Bartlett bought back Central Music, which I think was his first publisher. And then your grandfather bought Hartford so that he could get his copyrights back. So he not only got All Fly Away back, but he got Victory in Jesus. He got all of Bartlett's.
We got Bartlett's. Yeah, Bartlett's was actually assigned to us after he passed away because they went to his widow. So when they came up for renewal, she assigned everything to us.
Wow.
And he had some songs with Stamps Baxter as well.
Yeah, we have all those.
Wow.
And then, okay, so there's a Bartlett song, and I'll edit this out if you want me to, but one of the funniest titles that I've ever seen is a song that he wrote by himself, and it's called, and I've got the music because I kept it because I know my first glance at it could not be the way he intended to write it. But if you look it up, there's a song called If Men Go to Hell, Who Cares? Have you ever heard that?
Nope.
It's just one of the oddest titles. and the chorus is "Who cares? Who cares?" Something. If men go to hell, who cares? And at the top of the copyright, it was in an old Stamps Baxter book. At the top of the copyright, it says "taken from a sermon by," and it tells the preacher's name. So I know I can't be. But on face value, I couldn't write that title.
That's funny.
There's times I've been around people who I thought that about.
Yeah.
But,
He used to write a lot of songs after sermons. I mean, if you look at a lot of his copyrights, it'll say "taken from a sermon by."
yeah. And truth is, most writers of my generation get our songs from sermons or
Yeah.
and there's a debate going on now. A lot of churches are because they're writing more of their own worship music with their staff people. Then who owns the publishing? Because you wrote it and you're on staff and you got it from a sermon that I preached, and there's a case you can make for that. But the flip side of it is they don't operate like a publishing company. They don't know what a publisher is. They don't know what. All they know is there's money going out the door that they think they should own. And to me, a great example of doing it that correctly is Gateway out in Dallas. That they have a publishing entity in the church, and they are one of the highest streaming copyright holders. Anyway, that's a different episode for a different conversation. But I always was intrigued the business side of it, and then your grandfather, he was binding books and bought some used binding equipment, and didn't he set up?
Oh, honey, we still have that in our office.
Wow.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, I grew up making books. Our whole family did. My
Yeah.
first job was folding. I tell this all the time, but my first job was folding book covers. I was 5 years old. We all did that. His brothers did that. It's a generational thing.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure it's a job if you don't get paid, but that's my thing.
So you bound the books.
we have the plates that they were printed on. We bound them, we cut them, we stapled them, we did everything. I mean, we've sold about 50 million songbooks, and probably 40 million came out of the back room of our office.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's insane. We still actually. When I was a little kid, I played with all this stuff. But there was the binding looks like a big wheel from a ship, and you put the stuff in there and bind them down close so that they'll actually fold because the pages are all, you got to get the air out of them and stuff. And we still have bundles that never got made into songbooks that are still sitting around our book room from stuff from probably 50 years ago. Wow. They're still sitting there with the blocks on the end, which happen to be whatever was found around the office that could be cut down to put wood planks on the end, because there's paneling, there's everything that's repurposed. Yeah. So we have 2 staplers, a cutting machine, the printer, and the binding machine.
And you still use it? Still works?
It still works. We don't use it. Used to, but the last time I stapled books was probably about 10 years ago. Because once in a while because in the mid-'80s we stopped mid-'80s, we stopped printing the books and had them done in a local newspaper because they had, it went to microfiche.
It was modernized.
It was modernized. It was on microfiche. But sometimes they'd come in and they weren't stapled, so I'd have to go in and staple them, or Dad would have to staple them. And we have the one that goes in the seam, and also the flat binding one. So there's two different staplers there. And Dad would cut some once in a while if they came in uneven. He would get the cutter out and cut them off.
Wow.
So you say that you grew up doing that.
Oh yeah.
And there were 6 kids. Your dad had 5 siblings. Mm-hmm. So were their kids all involved as well?
No, it was myself, my brother, and my sister. Then Bill's kids, my cousins. So in 1976, Grandpa sold the publishing company to my dad and my Uncle Bill, and then Dad bought it out in 1983. So it was just us. Tom lived out in California, and he played for Buck Owens. I mean, my Uncle Tom was an original Buckaroo.
Wow.
He played steel guitars like Tiger by the Tail and all that stuff. That's
Together
Again. That's my Uncle Tom.
I love that song.
Right?
Yeah.
So my uncle.
I did not. That's so cool.
My Uncle Al had a contract with Columbia, so he opened for Buck.
Wow.
And then my Uncle Jack was his manager. So they were all out in California.
Wow.
So, and then my Aunt Betty was married, so I just loved Dad and Bill. So.
Well, I think I saw a picture of you when I was looking at you with Roy Clark.
Probably so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
How old was I?
Recent?
Is it recent?
Yeah, maybe. Roy looked older. You looked about the same. I mean, it was.
Oh, that was 30 years ago. No,
Yeah,
kidding.
no, it was probably. I don't know how long. But I always think of Roy when I think about Buck Owens, which I love Buck Owens and the Buckaroos. But I always think of Hee Haw with Roy Clark, him and Roy Clark. So.
Well, through our relationship with the Oak Ridge Boys, who used to sing gospel, their manager, Jim Halsey, who is still alive, 92 years old, I believe now, and still managing the Oak Ridge Boys.
Yes.
Lives out near Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so that's not too far from us.
Yeah.
But he also managed Roy Clark. He had a big deal where he managed so many Oklahoma artists from Reba to Garth and Vince and all of these people.
Everybody.
And he had a booking agency, and he ended up selling that to William Morris.
Yeah.
Right.
So he had a big deal. So Bob was always connected because of the Oak Ridge Boys to Jim Halsey. So we were connected with Jim and met him. And we went over to his office, and Roy was one of his clients.
It's a great picture.
Also lived in Tulsa. And so that's probably where that came from.
Didn't Halsey manage Kenny Rogers as well?
Yeah, Halsey has managed everybody alive or dead.
Yeah.
I mean, the man.
Well, I've heard his name around for years.
Jim is, I tell you, he is one of the most magnetic people. I just love Jim Halsey. Yeah. I mean, just to be, his mind never stops. Yeah. And he just he thinks like nobody else. Yeah. And he is an amazing man just to hang with and hear the stories. Yeah. Going to his office is like, you just can't take in everything that he's accomplished.
Yeah.
Because he's got everything around, and you just, I grew up around all the stuff because it was just around. Yeah. But and I never see it because if you're around it, you don't see it.
Right.
But I can't. The people are overwhelmed when they come to our office. I feel that way when I would go to his office because you're just like, holy moly cow! This is.
Yeah, I mean, he brought the first country stars to the Soviet Union back in the 80s, and all of these different things. It's wild. But, Jim was our connection to get to visit with Roy Clark.
That's
he was
so cool.
Such a wonderful man.
Mom and Dad have known because of the Oak Ridge Boys. Jim used to have these parties out at a place called the Zinc Ranch. So this was back in the 70s. Yeah. And they would go to these things with all the country artists. Because, I mean, with the thing with little Jimmy Dickens, we've always been involved in the country world, too.
Yeah.
So, because, everybody did our stuff. Ray Stevens did Pagan Radio and everything. So everybody did our stuff. But so they would go, and everybody would fly into Tulsa to this big, huge party. I mean, Roy Clark was there all the time, and people would come in on private airplanes back in those days, even. And so it was a big. I'm a kid. I don't know what these things are. I was little. I didn't care. Yeah. But they went, and they had a great time. So I mean, they've always been connected with that stuff.
So cool.
So songs like, tell me. I grew up hearing this as a kid, the song Rank Strangers. Who was the opera star who had the original cut on that, the big cut?
Probably the Stanley Brothers.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. That's the one that's in the Library of Congress.
I never understood what that meant until I got a little older. With the Rank Stranger, I thought was the smelly neighbor.
Try Googling it. There's no answer.
Yeah. So when you, and another big thing back then and I'm curious, in the books that you do even still, do you use shape notes still?
Mm-hmm. Some of them.
And that was a big deal back in that era. That was the way a lot of those guys learned to read. And for people who've not held a shape notebook, each, like a do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, each of those sounds had their own shape. And I remember producing records for J.D. Sumner and Stamps when they were at Benson, and I could only talk in numbers. Well, you sing a 4, you sing a 3.
The Nashville system.
And yes, because that was what I grew up with, and they could only understand it. So I had to make a conversion chart and put my 1, do, 2, re, so that I could talk in a language that they understood. But isn't your dad's, or your granddad's, the tombstone, doesn't it have shape notes, meet you in the morning?
I'll meet you in the morning. Yeah, it's got the sheet music for I'll meet you in the morning.
That's awesome.
And it's engraved in the stone in shape notes, right?
Wow.
So do you know in shape notes, you actually don't need a staff. You can just look at it. It'll tell you what key it's in if you learn how to read it.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't need. That's why if you find someone who knows how to read shape notes and you put them down on a piano, they'll play it perfect every time. The first time.
Yeah.
Because it tells you everything you need to know. You don't need a staff.
So peel that back a little bit. 'Cause Spears, sometimes they would pull out an old song and they would only sing the name of the note.
Yeah.
Like in 4-part harmony, they would sing the do re, and crowds were not only fascinated. I was fascinated from the platform.
It's because they knew how to read shape notes.
But Dad Spear was really big into that. And there was a reason why the note was where it was.
Exactly.
So explain that. What all you can tell from a shape note.
You can basically if you look at a shape note. And you only have to look at it one time. Because like in band and stuff like that, now they take you and they give you a thing and you play it one time and they grade you on it, right? If kids or whoever learned how to read shape notes, they could look at that and read it for perfect shape. They could do it perfectly the first take, every single time. It tells you the rhythm. It tells you this time. It tells you everything you need to know, just by the shape of the note, whether it's whole, half, whatever, however much it's shaded. It tells you everything if you know what to look for.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's an amazing system if you know what you're looking at.
So I got called this week to go and speak next month at a North Georgia gospel music school, and they still teach shape notes.
Yeah. You need a book so you can teach it?
That'll be $5.95.
Plus shipping and
handling. That's right.
I'm old enough to have some of my earliest songs in shape note.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't think about it, but I remember hearing about typewriters that they
Grandpa,
could actually.
we have one.
You have one?
Yeah, Grandpa had it made.
Wow.
Grandpa had the first one made with the guy because it was just how he wrote. Grandpa wrote like right to left. Or left to right.
Yeah, the typewriter.
I'm dyslexic.
The typewriter, you could type the notes on it and the lyrics. It wasn't like you had to just type the notes and then had to get a separate typewriter.
Wow.
It was just like a shift key that would allow you to get to the notes.
Yeah.
Did you know Harold Lane? Did you know that name? He was with the Spears for years and years. He was a big arranger, and he
had one.
Yes.
Yeah, Grandpa, but he did this back in like the 40s. There's two of them. We have one in our office. I think there's one at the Gospel Music Hall of Fame.
At the
SGMA Hall of Fame. Is the other one.
That's incredible.
Cool. I love that.
Yeah, it's things I don't see, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just been there since I was born.
So were you, and I know you have tons, I just want to ask a couple of questions. As a young person, your grandfather, Albert Brumley, did you feel, because nowadays, the Spear kids, they knew their parents and their grandparents. I hate the star, but they were starting.
Yeah.
Reba always knew her mother was special, Dottie Rambo. Yeah. The grandkids knew her. Did you know your grandfather, or did you have very many years with him?
Oh, yeah, I was little. I spent every
Did
day
you
with
know he was this world famous songwriter?
No.
Did you realize that?
I didn't know that until I was in my 30s. I had no idea who he was.
To your 30s.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
Well, think about it. We lived out in the country. It's not like he did a tour.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Did he go and do anything at all?
No.
Did he go speak before conferences?
He wouldn't do anything. The only time he'd leave is he'd come to NSAI.
For the
Hall of Fame dinner.
And that was it.
CSAC maybe.
Isn't that crazy?
Imagine?
No, that's what
He just... No, but I will tell you, people came to us.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
Now, my normal was going into Grandma and Grandpa's house and not knowing who was going to be there. Right? So when Ernest Cub comes over and Roy Clark would come over and Grandpa Jones and Kitty, I could name anybody on the Opry Stars, or the music guys. The Blackwoods are over there all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know from nothing. They're just people in the house.
Yeah.
I'm sitting.
Would they sit around and sing and everything?
Oh, we'd sing and sit around playing the creek. Just sit around the dinner table. I never knew who was going to be
and
there.
no video back then to capture
it. So Tom also played for Ricky Nelson. I love this story because, Ricky Nelson was a big deal.
Big deal.
And this is during Garden Party, right? So I'm in the creek and there's this guy with
You're
hair.
too young to know that song.
Garden Party? No, it's a great song. The lyrics to that song, I love that song.
It is a great song. I know, it is a great song.
But I was swimming with Ricky Nelson in the creek. I don't know from nothing, because he's just the guy from last night that had the shiny shirt on.
Oh, that is
because that's all he was to me, was a guy on stage. So I'm backstage in the locker room, you know, in Memorial Hall in Joplin, Missouri, with Ricky Nelson taking pictures. I don't know who he is. I don't care who he is. But you play with me in the creek. That's all I cared about.
Yeah, that is so funny.
So
well, and she'd sit at the dinner table and on Ernest Tubb's lap, and Ernest Tubb would eat her green beans, and her mom would start yelling at him, "She needs to eat her own green beans.
Yeah.
Let it
Think
go."
about that, Dave.
I wear his hat all the time.
Did they get a lot of still pictures of those kind of things?
I don't know. Well, it's funny. That's where those pictures are coming from. Is us going through boxes.
Yeah.
Because we've got so
I get that.
much.
Yeah.
And for those who want to see those, is it on Facebook too, or is it just?
We have a bigger following on Facebook on Brumley and Sons Music.
Okay.
Our Instagram just doesn't grow. I don't know if it's a demographic thing.
I think it is a demographic. I do, but I think it can.
You know, we have on Facebook. I think we have 33 or 3,400 followers.
Yeah.
On Instagram, it's only a couple hundred.
Yeah. It's the age thing.
And did I remember you saying that sometimes you'll stumble onto a picture and have to ask Betsy who it is?
I have to ask Betsy. There's times there's a few people I've asked where I've had people reach out to me and say, "I'm a Southern gospel historian.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who it is, just send me the picture and I'll see if I can tell you who it is."
Yeah.
So I've used that a few times. Sometimes if I don't even know who it is, we'll just post it.
And then
somebody will know.
Somebody will tell us.
Somebody will know for the next maybe 10 years or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's up to you guys.
Now,
our most recent post, we put out a picture over the weekend about Teacher Appreciation Day. Now, Bob, the small community of Powell, Bob was in a one-room schoolhouse when he was a kid. Right. And he used to say he was the valedictorian of his class. And I would also remind him he was the only one in the 8th grade, so he needs to stop saying that.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's true.
But, someone asked us the other day, said, "Who was the teacher?" I don't know. We don't know who the teacher is. Somebody in the community might come out, and our community might come out and know who it is. But, all of Albert and Goldie's children have passed away, so there's nobody around that knows everything anymore.
Yeah.
So your dad, they had 6 kids. Albert and all of them were in different aspects of the business. Did your dad work the longest for your grandfather?
Well, in essence, I guess, because in '76 he bought the company.
Okay.
Yes.
Did he work with him before that?
He and Bill worked there until
Dad never moved out of Powell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So some of the, you could. I love the song stories. If that hadn't come out, I'm fascinated by those. But beyond the song stories, there are things that your dad, I think Bill was a part of that as well. You mentioned at the very beginning, did I ever do the Albert E. Brumley? Was it some rodeo
the Sundown
grounds?
The Gospel Sing. Yeah, rodeo. The Springdale Rodeo Grounds. Yeah.
But that was a big event for Southern Gospel.
Oh, huge. 40,000 people.
Yep.
And I think Dad's Spirit used to talk about back in the early days of the morning till night singings that they were a part of founding. But I think that Springdale thing was one of the first big all-night sings, what they would call it. It literally wasn't all night, but it felt like it.
When it started. When it started in 1969, they went from sundown to sunup.
I did not realize
Literally did that. Wow. So the first 3 years was one night. Then it went to 2 nights. And after, that was like 75, 76, Dad said, we're stopping about 4 o'clock in the morning. Went to 3 nights, still did that up until I was like in my 20s. So this is in the 90s. We're going until 3 and 4 o'clock.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
4 nights a week.
Wow.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
And it was hot.
Oh, Lord have mercy, yes.
Gosh, it was hot. I played with a group called the Celestials, and I think it was my first or second weekend out with them, and we did that date. And I remember we were following the Hemphills, and just thinking, I was such a fan of the music, and here I am pulling that bus up past all the crowds. You pull up near and just thinking, this is one of those legendary events.
I remember seeing the ads for it in the
rite of
old Singing
passage.
News and different things.
Yeah.
The artists that were there, and you thought, oh, that'd be so cool to go to.
We had everybody.
I know. That's
And
right.
that went on. Did that COVID kind of end that?
No, we stopped doing that in 2018, 2017.
2017 was our last
Okay.
year.
Yeah.
Which is, that's not been that
It was
long
50
ago.
years.
Yeah.
It was 50 years, but it was. I mean, it was time, and,
Yeah.
and Mom was getting sick, and
Yeah.
it just luckily we didn't try to have it the next year to the next year because Mom really got sick,
Yeah.
and it would have not been good.
Yeah.
So God was with us, and we
Yeah.
stopped at the right
Yeah.
time.
So all the family was involved in all the aspects of that as well.
Oh, would you like to know?
Yes,
I'd love
I do.
to hear
I
some
love
of the
that.
stories.
So, up until we moved to Tulsa, which was the last 3 years, every ticket sale was done on the phone. People called us.
No.
Or
Yeah.
mail-in.
Or mail in.
Really?
Yeah. So
That's only 8 years ago.
we knew
Oh my
everybody.
God. Yeah.
And Kevin was Mr. Brumley Singh because Kevin had
I modernized it all, and I
Right out of business.
well, I brought it into where we had a database of where everyone was supposed to be seated, what seats were sold, and I was the one that said, "Why don't we put it on iPads? That way, if people have questions of where their tickets are, if there's a dispute over it, we'll know by looking at who's supposed to be in the right seat." And so I would just stand out in the middle of the crowd, and people would just, I can't find my seat, or I'm having trouble. So I get to my seat and someone's in it. Well, the volunteer usher doesn't want to stand in the middle and get in the middle of that argument.
Right.
So that became up to me to handle, and so that's just kind of what we did. Is
wow.
He was the muscle of the gospel.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly
well,
right.
they all got to know
The
me.
bouncer.
Most of the time they would only talk to us on the phone, but now all of a sudden they're meeting us in person. And next year when they ordered their tickets, you helped me last year.
Right.
And it was such a great experience. You always got to try to make it good for the people that were in attendance. Cause,
sure.
Bob always would have the artist would say, we don't want to be first or we don't want to be last. We want to be in this position on the show. And Bob would always tell the artist, said, "You look at all these people out here in the crowd." Said, "I can't do this show without them. But I can do it without you if you want to go home."
That's
wow.
Dad had a set of rules that I swear.
I love that.
If you went on at 7:35, you were done in 30 minutes. I mean, or whatever. It was down to the minute. I remember the year we filmed in 2008, made a TV show out of it, and the film crew was from Nashville, and they were like, "I've never seen a show run on time. I mean, it started on time, it ended on time, every person was on time." And they were just amazed because we're like, "Here's the schedule." And when you film a festival, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But this was down. We had it down to the minute because Dad had rules.
Yeah.
And Jeff Easter, every year, because Dad would say, because it's different groups every night, right?
Yeah,
So Dad would give the rules every night. Well, by the end of it, Jeff Easter's like, "Let me do it." And he would
say the rules without looking at the sheet because they were the same rules every year.
That's hard to believe about Jeff.
Yeah. I love Jeff. Yeah. That's crazy.
There's concerts I've been at where I wish.
Yeah.
Do I remember seeing somewhere a picture of James Blackwood standing in the mud?
In a white suit?
In a white suit.
Absolutely.
Wow.
What was the backstory? It was a rain that flooded that infield or something.
You couldn't have a Brumley sing without at least one night of rain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just part of it. Now, remember, we're in a rodeo arena.
Yes.
Now, rodeo arenas
are not all dirt.
Just FYI, because the rodeo's been in there. With cattle.
The rodeo was always 4th of July weekend, and then the gospel sing was the first week of August.
Yeah, just think about this. So now we've got rain and mud and
other stuff.
And James being James, and a lot of these guys would do this, but we just have this picture of James want to get down in the crowd, and he took his shoes off, jumped down in the mud, and sank in and just sang.
Have you seen that picture?
No, but
I don't know where I would have
look.
seen it, but
it's probably on our Facebook.
Okay, I'll find it.
Yeah, but it's a great picture. It's like
Facebook.
1974 or something like that. And he's doing this, and I mean,
if
it's
it
just,
sold another
and
record,
it's
he was all
mud
about
and
it.
it's yuck and other stuff and.
I mean, I'm just trying to, what will I do to sell a record? This.
Yes.
This right here.
And I mean,
That's so funny. Yeah.
those guys are so professional.
They do.
Yes.
And they love
So
their
professional.
fans. They love their fans.
But you know what went on behind the scenes? Now, back behind stage is where they sold the albums, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So you would get the Kingsmen and the Blackwoods or whoever's up next to each other. And I kid you not, every year there was a bet who could sell the most
Oh,
albums.
I know. I've heard
So
this.
they had a system, because in the back of the chute is where you'd go park the bus, as you remember.
Right.
And they would just have a line of dollies going back and forth, somebody running. It's like, how many...
Yes.
I mean, these guys would sell
Do you remember
10,000 albums.
How many
Wow.
cases of albums?
How many
sell?
cases can we sell in a night?
So who
There's no
was
streaming, so you
Yeah,
got.
I know. I know.
who was it
The
was
good
on
old
here a
days.
few weeks ago maybe that told the story about putting their records in front of somebody
Oh,
else's
yeah.
table,
I don't doubt it.
Oh, yeah. There was...
and the people were coming up and
Yeah.
buying,
Yep.
and they couldn't get to their because, like you said, it was
Yeah.
a competition,
Competition.
and that
Wow.
that still goes on. It's a little more subtle now.
Yeah. No, these guys were outright.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, there was
They-
times
yeah.
that there's just boxes flying everywhere because they couldn't get them out fast enough.
Yeah.
Man,
But they would sell 10,000 records
Oh, I miss
at
those.
a night
Yeah.
at our event,
Yeah.
which is a lot.
Wow. Which
Think
is
about that. That's a lot of records.
Records.
so what
yes.
was the story? There's some story about
Wow.
your dad, maybe, and maybe one of your uncles that were both like postmasters.
Yeah, my Uncle Bill was a postmaster. My dad was a postmaster. Both of them in Powell, Missouri. Mm-hmm.
And they did that while they were working the
Yes. So Bill was the postmaster.
how big is Powell?
Powell, well, it depends who you ask. And what is your version of Powell? The mailing route, how big it is in town. I mean,
She is sassy.
it's-
I
but
love
it's the
that's a
truth.
compliment. That is really a compliment.
But, you know, I mean, if you look at the mail route, there, at the time when Dad was postmaster, there was 200 boxes, right? But in Powell proper, there's like 10 people,
Yeah.
right? So
That's
it depends on what you want,
Yeah.
what your version of
Yeah.
it is. But it's very rural. I mean, and I'm not making this up, we literally got cell phone service 2 years ago.
There's a story we found recently from the Singing News years ago where they had interviewed Albert, and he sent in a letter to follow up to the interview the following month that they printed, and he said, "I must apologize. I have been corrected. There are not 50 people that live in Powell. There are 68 people, and 61 of them are pretty nice."
That is
Wow.
so
So-
funny.
The winner is the one who corrected him.
That is funny.
Grandpa was very witty. He
Yeah.
was very, very
Yeah.
witty. But Powell is very small. I mean, and I still call it 1954 because it's like going back in time.
Yeah.
I grew up in what I call Norman Rockwellville.
Yeah.
I really, really did.
Yeah.
I mean, Powell is on a peninsula between two creeks with hills on both sides. It's in a valley.
Tell us where it's at.
It's in the southwest corner of Missouri.
Missouri,
So it's
okay.
like 11 miles north of Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
50 miles south of Joplin, Missouri,
50,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
give or take.
Do you know the name Janae Fleener?
Oh, we know
well,
Janae very well.
Janae won our contest, our fiddle contest,
That's
when
what
she
I
was
was
11 years old.
I
See,
wondered
when
if-
he pulls out this stuff.
Well, do you know who Janae is?
No.
She's like the last 5 or 6 years the CMA Musician of the Year.
Really?
She's a fiddle player.
Okay.
She's amazing.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
when
she's
She's a
played
great
with
songwriter, too.
Blake Shelton's band.
Yes.
She was on the Voice band. She
Okay.
was-
Yeah,
oh,
she's-
anytime you need a fiddle,
Yeah.
It's Janae.
you want to
Okay.
contact Janae.
Janae and her mother, will come with her to Nashville every now and then. But Janae, when I found out where she was from, I said, "Did you ever go to the Alberti?" I mean,
Yeah,
and she, of course,
of course she did.
yeah, but she talked about the fiddle contest, and
That was at Hill and Hollow, though.
yeah,
You probably don't know about the Hill and Hollow, do you?
I do not. I'm about to though.
So Grandpa started the Hill and Hollow the same year he started the Gospel Sing in 1969. So we had the Brumley Gospel Sing the first week of August and the Hill and Hollow Folk Festival the last week of September. So you're looking at like 7 weeks in between two events, right? And it started off as just a community event to do things, and some little ladies helped out and blah, blah, blah. And there was paintings.
It was
and
the idea of the ladies.
It was the idea
Yeah.
of the ladies, yeah. And Grandpa, was there. We had the land because we have like 11 acres of beautiful land.
Yeah.
And so it was jams and jellies and community and, people get
Yeah,
together and
yeah.
Grandpa brought in the music. And And it just started growing because people started coming. So it became Friday night was amateur night, and so it was mostly bluegrass and local bands and stuff like that. Saturday was Grand Ole Opry night, so because of our connections, Grandpa brought in all the Opry stars, which is how come I grew up around them. And then on Sunday was gospel, so all the big groups would come in. And we'd have 2,000 or 3,000 people in the valley, parking in the fields. You know, it's $2 to get in, the whole thing.
Crazy.
Ernest Tubb came, we had 10,000 people. That was a trip. But yeah, so I mean, we grew up doing that, and it grew to like there was about 120 booths, and everything was vetted, everything was homemade. We had glass blowers, we had people making cornmeal, we had willers, we had jams and jellies, and all the different quilt making and all the different things that we look at today as old fashioned, but that was just part of it then.
Wow.
So,
Man.
so yeah.
We actually have in our house an artifact from the Hill and Hollow where it was I'm not sure how big the piece of wood was to start with, but they whittled down and carved it out into a chain. So it's hand carved wooden links.
That's
Unbelievable.
Wow.
With hooks on each end.
Wow.
And it's probably 10 or 12 feet long.
That guy was actually on Johnny Carson. There's a painting. If you look at the picture we have in our office, some guy did a painting. And at the end, this guy had the same booth every year. This chain kept getting longer and longer and longer because he whittled it for years. And he ended up being on Johnny Carson with this wooden chain of the world's record of this, whatever it was, wooden chain. And he would bring it every year and hang it up as his wall of his chain as it got longer and longer and longer.
We didn't have that in Michigan where I grew up.
Yeah, not in Idaho either, where I grew up. Wow.
So when you inherit the legacy, business aside, you inherited a legacy like your cousins did, and was there ever a thing that you felt like your uncles or your generation felt like, man, I wonder if I can write a song? Did you ever feel any of that, or did any of them become writers?
That's a great question. Or are you a writer?
No.
We have in our songbooks, we have found songs that Bob wrote.
Okay.
There's some that the other boys wrote too.
Really nothing that ever caught on to anything, and then some of the other of the boys did.
Yeah.
We don't have it. I don't. Betty didn't. There's
Betty
mentioned in there
Talk
at
about
all.
pressure, though.
Yeah.
And Dusty's talked about, he worked with Dottie Rambo for years, and Reba's an amazing writer.
But she always felt pressure from her mother. You know, if you know the Rambos,
Yeah, I know,
they're she told us she'd walk in and say, "Mom, I wrote this new song. Let me tell you about it." And Dottie would, in all seriousness, say, "Oh, honey, that's really good. Let me tell you what I've been working on. The sky shall unfold, preparing as it, we shall behold him, or if that isn't love," which are sung constantly.
The first song he wrote, I was.
Grandpa, you mean?
Yeah.
I can hear them singing over there.
I can hear. I knew it was over there or something.
Wow.
Did that ever?
Yeah.
I never heard that. Did that have any life of its own?
The Chuck Wagon Gang recorded it. The Chuck Wagon Gang was big.
They brought him to the table. Didn't they sell like 1 million of his?
1949, yeah.
The Chuck Wagon Gang, I think, has over 82 different recordings of Albert's songs, different songs.
Them, the Blackwood brothers, the Lewis family, those guys
I
all
love
have.
that. And
there's all those. Like, we have people who've done an entire album.
Yeah.
on
That
Albert.
Cathedrals did a great album.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember it. I do.
We've got it on cassette if anyone's interested.
We're still selling cassette.
I love
So
that.
on those, do you have like the original audio masters of those? That
We don't have the masters. They were never part of
What's
our
your-
record company.
But
so.
the record company. I remember that
Yeah.
Brumley thing from Cathedrals. I'm trying to think what company it was with.
so tell us about. This is fascinating.
There's so many things I want to ask him. I mean, just
Tell us about the I'll Fly Away Foundation.
Yes.
So the I'll Fly Away Foundation, actually, there's a bigger, longer story, and I will make it very, very short. But in 2005, I actually died and came back. And one of the things that I talked to God, the whole thing, and one of the things came back was I needed a foundation. Now, I know nothing about nonprofits. No idea.
It's a whole world of
It's
its
a whole
own.
world of its own. So Kevin and I talked about it, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So, you pray about it, you go along your way. Well, then, I don't know, 2 or 3 years after, we're digging in the office, and I come across this folder, and it said Albert E. Brumley Foundation. I'm like, well, that's a sign.
Yeah.
So I told Kevin, I said, it was signed. I mean, the only thing is it just wasn't submitted. So I'm like, all right, Kevin, we got to do this. So we renamed it basically the Alpha.
Had your grandfather started? He wanted to do it?
And wanted to do it. It never got finished.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a sign for us. So we started the I'll Fly Away Foundation.
Yeah, it's all about music with children.
I love that. I was reading about that.
So what we decided to do was, we go into classrooms, and this is all pre-COVID. We haven't been back into a classroom since COVID. Yeah. But we would go into the classroom and we would bring a songwriter with us because neither one of us can play an instrument. And we would have the songwriter would say, what are you guys learning about today? Yeah. And they would tell us, and we started in just the 3rd grade and we expanded on and ended up doing 2nd grade through 5th grade. And they would tell us, in 2nd grade, we're working on constellations, and 3rd grade, we're working on the water cycle and different things. And or they'd say, we just went on a field trip to the
Neosho Fish Hatchery.
To the fish hatchery. Or we went on the field trip to the George Washington Carver Memorial, because he's not from Neosho, or Diamond, which is not too far from where we are, just south of Joplin. And so we'd settle on a subject, we'd let the kids vote on it, and we'd say, well, tell us all about it. And they would list off all of the facts that they knew, and then we'd say, well, if you're going to write a song about it, what would be the first line? And we'd go through the whole thing. And then once you get a verse done, because we go over what a verse is, what a chorus is.
Yeah.
Once you get it down, you say, if you were going to sing that, what would it sound like? And we knew that it wasn't necessarily going to sound good, because we didn't go in and teach them how to shape that yet. But after they sang it, we'd say, does that sound right to you? No, we need to fix it. Well, let's work on the words, and then we'd go through how you that is, so many syllables per line and make it equal and that sort of thing, and that's where the kids learn.
So I love that.
So we wrote songs. There's so many good ones. My favorite is The Journey of a Seed.
Okay.
And it's the idea of a seed falling out of a tree and replanting itself. But it falls out of the tree and it lands on a deer, and the deer takes it to the creek, and the creek flows it down. And next thing you know, it's growing 10 miles away from the tree it fell out of, but a new tree is growing.
Did you get publishing on those from those kids?
It's funny. One of the kids was so smart about it. He asked us. He said, because he wrote a song on his own, and we asked him to share it with us, and he said, well, I want to keep my own copyright.
Sure.
Okay.
That is 3rd grade.
So
but they've been schooled somewhere.
Yeah.
What we ended up having to do was we had an attorney draw us up paperwork that basically gave the kids' parents had to sign, and the kids had to sign over their rights back to the foundation. Yeah. That way we can continue it on with other kids.
If
there was ever any money made.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So basically it's Schoolhouse Rock, but the kids are writing their own versions.
Which I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the kids are writing it themselves. They take more interest into it. They're not just learning a song.
And they're going to talk about it and everything. I helped write this song.
It's amazing the statistics. So the kids would we didn't know what to expect. So but the kids would go, they would sing it on the playground. So now you've got kids teaching each other. Yeah. We wrote about this, but they're learning each other's songs, and now they're teaching each other. Yeah. We had one school that had 13 languages in one of the classrooms, because it was just so people coming in from everywhere. Well, each one of the kids would sing it in their native language, but that just brought them closer, because all of a sudden it's like, we're saying the same thing just differently. So that just broke down those walls. Yeah. And a lot of them were first language learners. So they're first generation language learners.
That's great.
So their parents learned English by the songs that we wrote, because they understood them in their native language and could sing them.
That's so cool.
It was amazing. It was just things that we never expected to happen. Yeah.
Are you two the only ones in the family that are still carrying on the stuff for the Albert Brumley stuff, or
the foundation is just Kevin?
It's just you, but the other stuff.
The publishing is owned amongst her siblings.
Okay, Kevin and I are the only ones that really work it.
That's what I was going to ask you. You don't, yeah. Because you can tell you're so passionate about it. So.
I'm just making that up.
So she's a good actress.
That's great.
And I would ask you this, just out of curiosity. is there a song that your granddaddy wrote that you go, I wish more people had heard this one?
Oh, there's a couple of them. One is If Everybody Had a Heart Full of Love, and then My Closest Kin. Those are two of my very favorites that nobody knows.
My Closest Kin. I'm going to write
My
those down
Closest
because
Kin.
I'm always looking at new songs.
Yeah, My Closest Kin is a great song. I don't even know if we own it.
We do.
Truly.
We do.
And what was the other one?
If Everybody Had a Heart Full of Love.
I love that title.
Yeah, they're both about love. I mean, this is just...
So what, beyond, the copyrights are so valuable and they're so well known that you, in Nashville they call it mailbox money. You could actually spend your days just walking to the mailbox and
Amen.
and win.
We've graduated to direct deposit.
That's right. We do direct
Which
deposit.
is-
I don't even want to get out of the chair now.
So
Great.
what?
I love that.
But the passion that we've heard tonight, and so what's your goal beyond just? Is it just keeping these alive for the next generation, or is there a bigger picture that you have in putting all your passion and time into
That's a
this?
great question. Do you pitch the songs?
No.
So, I mean, I'm sure
that's
with a
not
catalog,
true.
with a catalog like that, I'm
That's
sure
not
you
true.
get
I
a
pitch
lot
all
of.
the time.
Yeah,
We pitch the songs, but the songs also pitch
yeah.
themselves.
I would think that.
to
I would
some
think
people.
that because of the legacy and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
You know, people in gospel music ask us all the time, how do you get into
Big
your songs
movies.
into
Oh, right.
movies and
Yeah,
television? Because
yeah.
it was recently in Elvis.
Yes.
Back in
Oh yeah.
2022.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And people ask us, how do you do that? And it's about a relationship.
It
so
is a relation.
you know, we get-
that's
we
so
Comes
get a
up in
good.
every
request.
episode.
Every episode is
we get a request.
Yep.
You know, like it was in Medea Family Funeral, Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
That just happened. We didn't pitch that.
Yeah.
They let the actors ad lib,
Yeah.
and one of the actors stood up and started singing "I'll Fly Away,"
Which is.
and
Then they had a license.
they had to license
Then
it
they
because
have
they
to
wanted to
license
keep
it.
it
That's
in.
where I
And
say
so-
God does these big God winks. I always say when I hear that kind of stuff because that's usually the way it works.
So when we got the request,
Mm.
we of course we approved it
Yeah.
because it was a proper
Yep.
use.
Yep.
And but then we went to the music supervisor, and we got to talking to him and found out that his wife's from Arkansas, and we got to know him a little bit. And they said, well, next time we're out in Los Angeles, we'll come by and have lunch, and we just get to know you. So we go to lunch with Joel, and he introduces us to some other people, and next thing you know, he's writing us on the next part. We need something that goes along with this theme. Do you have anything in your catalog?
That's so,
Let me find
Oddly
you
enough,
something.
we do.
Yeah,
Let me find
that's
you
so
something.
cool. Oh, I
But
love
we
that.
have, we were just out in LA about last month, 2 months ago or whatever.
In February.
And we sat down with our friends. They are music supervisors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now we're like we weren't even pitching. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, we haven't seen you guys. So
Yeah.
we're sitting down
I love it.
and, and like Stuart Hamlin, right?
Yep.
What's Bill's?
Bill Lindsay.
Bill
I don't know if
Lindsay
you
is
know
his
Bill
great
Lindsay.
grandson.
I thought about Bill while we were talking because he's doing the same thing with his grandfather's catalog.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but we introduced our friend to Bill because Bill's asking us, what do you do? So, well, here, let me introduce you to our friend. So we did, and we were out there, and she just got him a cut on some NBC show or whatever for one of his
I
grandpas.
love it.
Just because, why not?
You want the songs to live on. You
I was
want
with
the
Bill
songs.
one day at Daywind and stopped in the studio, and Ben Isaacs was in there. And Ben had just cut It Is No Secret on one of Jimmy's Fortune's CDs. And I said, Ben, I want you to meet somebody. I said, his granddad wrote It Is No Secret. And he said, no, that was Stuart Hamlin. I said, this is his grandson. And Ben was like, can I play you the cut? And we stopped the
I think
session.
I
and-
love that. Oh,
but
man.
I love connecting the dots, and this has been amazing tonight.
Wow.
This is Dusty.
This is why we love to call our podcast I Love to Tell the Story.
This has been
And
great.
We love telling the story.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and spending a little time with us. And
You
Give
know
us
what
your-
I was done?
Give us your website for the foundation, and I'd love an Instagram, Facebook for the stuff. I'd love to know that.
Well, the foundation is I'll Fly Away Foundation.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it's ILLFLY Foundation.org. You can also get, I think, I'llFlyAway.com. I think links to it too. But you have that, and then BrumleyMusic.com
Yep.
for the publishing company, and you can find our songbooks there. And then, just search out I'll Fly Away Foundation or Brumley and Sons Music.
That's what I did
on
today.
Facebook.
And if you want to look at the foundation stuff, check out our YouTube page. 'Cause
Okay.
there's a lot, we film a lot of it.
Okay, good.
And there's actually some testimonials from like what the teachers think.
That's great.
Because it is from their point of view. Because they don't want to give up their time when
Right.
they realize what's going on. They're like, yes.
Yeah.
So
They're under enough pressure as it is as a teacher.
This has been great. Thank you all so much.
oh, you're welcome, guys. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
That's great. She's sassy.